Hello guys, welcome to Dr. Nightstare. I know you guys come here to relax and take a nap. So before we go, please hit like and subscribe. By the way, also tell me what time and where you guys listening from. Alright then. My life began with a pill. Every morning, a small white tablet melted on my tongue, its bitter taste a familiar start to each day. My mother watched me swallow, her gaze firm, her lips pressed into a thin line. She spoke of the medication often, a shield against the sickness called flutter. Flutter was a plague, she insisted, a monstrous disease that stole breath and reason, twisting people into grotesque forms. The public squares displayed images, stark proof of the danger, faces contorted in agony, bodies consumed by an alien growth. These pictures burned into everyone's mind, fueling a deep and pervasive fear throughout our city. I never knew what flutter truly felt like. The world around me existed without bright colors. The sky was a pale expanse, the trees green only in name, and people moved with subdued gestures. My own heart beat a steady rhythm, never quickening, never faltering. No warmth spread through my chest. No sudden pang of sorrow tightened my throat. My mother began the treatment when I was very small, a series of painful injections followed by the daily pills I still took. I remembered the sharp, clean smell of the clinic, the cold touch of the nurse's hands. Other children cried, their mothers clutching them, but I simply watched, observing the desperate resolve in my mother's eyes. She told me the pills kept me safe, kept me well, preventing the same suffering she had witnessed. I felt no joy, no sorrow, no anger, only a quiet stillness inside me, a perfect emptiness. The medication promised safety, and it delivered that safety, leaving me in a state of tranquil indifference. My life unfolded in shades of quiet acceptance, a safe existence devoid of any true feeling. A new student arrived in our class one morning. He stood at the front of the room, his eyes moving across the subdued faces. His mouth curved upwards into a wide, open expression. It was a bold smile, unlike anything I had seen before. The other students shifted in their seats, their gazes dropping to their desktops. This boy, Casper, radiated a strange, bright energy. As he walked past my desk to an empty seat, a sensation started deep in my chest. It was a quick, light trembling, like something waking up inside me. My heart gave a sudden hard beat. I felt a warmth spread through my veins, a quick surge of something new and alarming. This was the flutter my mother spoke of, the first symptom of the illness. I gripped the edge of my desk, my knuckles white. A small voice in my mind screamed warnings, echoing my mother's desperate pleas. Flutter was sickness, it was death, it was the monstrous transformation everyone feared. Yet this new feeling also held a pull, a strange allure I could not deny. Later that day, at home, I held the small white pill in my palm. The tablet felt cool against my skin. My mother sat across the table, watching me with her usual firm gaze. Her eyes held a deep anxiety. I saw the fear etched into the lines around her mouth. She expected me to swallow the daily dose, to maintain my safe, emotionless state. I looked at the medicine, then at my mother's worried face. I pictured Casper's bright, open smile. A different warmth bloomed within me, stronger than before, pushing aside the fear. I opened my hand and dropped the pill directly into the waste chute. It made a soft click as it disappeared. My mother gasped, a sharp sound in the quiet kitchen. The next morning, I did not take the pill. The world instantly began to change. Colors burst forth, startling my eyes. The pale sky overhead now held a brilliant, deep blue. The trees outside my window shimmered with vibrant green leaves. People's clothes displayed rich, varied hues I had never noticed before. My own body felt alive, pulsing with new energy. A rush of intense feelings flooded me. There was a joyful lightness, a sudden excitement. There was also a strange ache, a deep yearning for something I could not name. Each sensation arrived with overwhelming force, a powerful torrent of emotion. I felt a quick, sharp sorrow when a child stumbled. I experienced a thrilling delight when a bird sang. Every moment brought a fresh wave of feeling, turning my once colorless existence into a vibrant, overwhelming cascade of life. The warnings faded, replaced by an intoxicating freedom. I welcomed the rush of emotion, allowing it to wash over me, transforming my world with every passing moment. Casper's eyes held mine. A warmth radiated from him that drew me closer. His hand found my cheek. His touch sent a tremor through my entire body. My hands rose to cup his face. His skin felt warm beneath my fingers. Our lips met. The contact ignited a rush through me. It was a gentle pressure at first, then deepened. His breath mingled with mine. It held a sweet scent. The flutter I had once feared now surged. It was not a sickness. It was a powerful current. Every cell in my body felt like it was waking, singing a song I had never heard. It was pure joy, a liberation of every suppressed feeling. I leaned into him, letting the world beyond us melt away. This was what life truly felt like, an all-encompassing torrent of sensation. His lips tasted like fresh rain and sun. Every touch, every movement, amplified the storm within me. I closed my eyes. I wanted only to exist in this moment. This overwhelming, intense sensation held me. A harsh light suddenly pierced the darkness behind my eyelids. Shouts erupted around us. I opened my eyes to see dark forms rushing towards us. Figures in white coats descended. Their movements were swift. Their faces were grim. Their intentions were clear. Hands grabbed at us, pulling. My mother's voice shrieked. Her hand connected with my cheek. The sharp sting jolted me, pulling me back from the intoxicating haze. The awakening was rude, pulling me into a blinding chaos. My vision cleared through the confusion. I saw Casper. He lay beside me on the ground, unmoving. His body was slumped. His face was pale. His eyes were wide and vacant, staring sightlessly upwards. His chest looked sunken, a hollowed-out space where his heart should have been. A buzzing sound rose. Thousands of iridescent butterflies swarmed from his mouth and eye sockets. Their wings fluttered. They emerged in a continuous stream, a living swarm. A thick, green, silky substance had begun to encase his body, forming a delicate cocoon around him. It shimmered in the harsh light, clinging to his clothes. It slowly obscured his form. His hand was still outstretched towards me, now covered in the green sheen. The sight of his transformation horrified me. A cold dread seized me. The flutter within me intensified. It was no longer a pleasant warmth. It felt like tiny, sharp-legged things scuttling beneath my skin. They moved with a clear purpose. I looked down at my arm. Veins pulsed with a sickly green light, spreading like an intricate web across my flesh. The lines widened, becoming darker. They became more pronounced. The skin itself began to ripple, showing tiny movements beneath the surface. My stomach churned. Deep nausea rose within me. My fingers twitched with an uncontrollable urge to scratch the writhing sensations. I understood what was happening. This was the monstrous disease. It consumed me too. A searing pain erupted in my chest, a sudden violent tearing. My shirt split open with a sharp rending sound. A rush of beating wings burst forth from my heart. Hundreds of butterflies, their wings many colors, clawed their way out. They flew upwards, a pulsing cloud of life. My body spasmed, contorting under the force of their emergence. My bones shifted and cracked. The sounds were sickening. My skin stretched and reformed, consumed by the same green silky growth that enveloped Casper. It crept over my limbs, tightening. It hardened. The feeling was agonizing. Beneath it, a sense of rightness began to bloom. The pain was a pathway. The pain subsided. An intoxicating rush of power replaced it. My vision sharpened. I saw the world with new clarity. Every leaf, blade of grass, speck of dust held intense color. My lips pulled back from my teeth. A slow, dazed smile spread across my face. It was not my own smile. It was alien and vast. I saw patterns and energies in the air around me. This was not death. This was a horrifying rebirth, a transformation into something more, something magnificent. I was rewritten, remade. I was a vessel for a beautiful horror. My new purpose, my new existence, pulsed inside me. The world would soon feel my flutter, the true, potent, consuming flutter. The bar was finally empty, the last patron stumbling out into the street moments before I locked the door. I began wiping down the stained counter, the damp cloth leaving clean streaks across the sticky surface. My shift had stretched long into the night, and I craved my bed, my muscles aching with fatigue. I moved behind the bar, gathering the empty glasses scattered on the service mat. That was when a cold hand clamped over my mouth, suffocating my breath. A guttural growl vibrated against my ear, and a sickening smell of decay and something metallic filled my nose. My heart leaped into my throat, hammering a frantic rhythm against my ribs. I struggled immediately, my body twisting, but the grip held firm, impossibly strong. She pulled me backward, dragging me away from the well-lit service area and into the darker corner behind the beer taps. Panic erupted, pure and cold. I thrashed wildly, my feet scrambling for purchase on the wet floor. My vision blurred from the sudden terror, then sharpened on the horrifying figure holding me. Her face was a nightmare made flesh. Skin was gone, peeled back like damp paper to expose raw, glistening muscle and tendon. Her jaw hung slack, revealing teeth that were too long, too pointed, and her milky eyes devoid of pupils fixed on me with an unnatural hunger. She wore nothing but tattered scraps of what might have once been a dress. "Help me!" I tried to scream, but the sound was muffled, trapped by her hand. Her grip shifted, a single arm wrapping around my chest, pinning my arms against my sides. She lifted me effortlessly from the floor. My hand scrabbled blindly, reaching for anything at all. My fingers brushed against the smooth, cool plastic of my phone lying on the back bar shelf. A sliver of desperate hope surged through me. With a sudden burst of adrenaline, I kicked out, connecting with her shin. The creature grunted, a sound of irritation rather than pain, loosening her grip fractionally. It was enough. I tore my hand free, snatched the phone, and jammed my thumb onto the emergency dial button. The scream flashed, connecting, a faint ringing echoing in my ear. Before I could speak a single word, her free hand moved with blurring speed. She slammed her fist down, crushing the phone with a sickening crack against the bar top. The device shattered into jagged pieces, useless. All hope drained from me, replaced by a cold, searing desperation. She dropped me onto the grimy floor behind the bar, her gaze unwavering, her breathing ragged and wet. I scrambled back, my hands finding purchase on the cold, sticky tiles. She lunged, her movements unnaturally swift. I dodged, slipping on spilled beer, and she slammed into the liquor shelving. Bottles crashed, glass splintering loudly around us. She turned back to me, an unhinged smile stretching her ruined face, her eyes burning with an insane intensity. The creature lunged, its ruined face grinning with that awful, unhinged joy. I scrambled backward, tripping over my own feet, my hands flailing for something, anything to defend myself. My fingers brushed against the jagged neck of a broken bottle lying on the wet floor, shards of glass glinting dangerously. Ignoring the cuts, I wrapped my hand around its base, the sudden weight giving me a sliver of desperate purpose. She was almost on me, her putrid breath hot on my face, her milky eyes wide with anticipation. I screamed. A raw, animal sound ripped from my throat, and swung the bottle with all the strength I had left. The glass exploded against her jaw, a sickening crunch echoing in the small space behind the bar. A spray of dark liquid erupted from the impact point, and she staggered back, a low, guttural growl rumbling deep in her chest. Her ruined face contorted, not with pain but with a momentary confusion. This pause was precious, fleeting. I scrambled to my feet, my legs shaking, my heart a frantic drum against my ribs. My eyes darted around, searching for an escape route, but she shook her head, a violent tremor, and lunged again, faster this time. She moved with an unnatural speed, closing the distance before I could fully react. Her clawed hands raked across my arm, tearing through my shirt, leaving burning trails of pain. I cried out, recoiling from the touch, and stumbled backward into a stack of empty kegs. A heavy bar stool lay discarded on its side near my feet, a relic from happier nights. In a desperate surge of adrenaline, I snatched it up, its cold metal legs surprisingly heavy, and thrust it forward, aiming blindly. The stool connected with her chest with a dull thud. She grunted, a short, sharp burst of air, and the force of the impact drove her back a step. The chair legs bent slightly under the strain, and my arms screamed from the effort. But she remained upright, her horrible eyes narrowed with renewed, furious intent. This was not stopping her, only slowing her down. She snarled, a wet, rattling sound, and began to advance once more, her damaged body twitching with unnatural strength. I backed away further, trapped between the liquor shelves and the encroaching horror. There was nowhere left to go. Her hand reached for me, her fingers spread wide, ready to tear. Panic threatened to overwhelm me, but a surge of pure, desperate refusal ignited something primal inside. This was it, my last chance. As she lunged again, her face inches from mine, I dropped the mangled bar stool. I coiled every muscle in my body, drawing on a reserve of strength I did not know I possessed, and delivered a powerful, desperate kick. My boot connected with her ruined jaw, a sickening crack echoing through the empty bar. Her head snapped back with violent force. Her body went rigid for a split second, then sagged, collapsing backward into the shattered remains of the liquor display. The impact was enough. I did not wait to see if she would rise again. My mind screamed one word: ruin. I scrambled over the fallen kegs, my body screaming in protest, and lunged toward the narrow gap between the bar and the wall, clawing my way out of the suffocating darkness behind the counter. I clawed my way through the narrow gap, stumbling into the main bar area. My legs were unsteady, my entire body shaking uncontrollably. I pushed through the swinging door, past the empty tables, and slammed into the front door, fumbling with the lock. Blood soaked my shirt, warm and sticky against my skin. I did not know whose blood it was. My throat was raw from screaming, a sound that now just hitched uselessly in my chest. I burst out onto the street, the cold night air hitting my face, and ran without looking back. My feet hammered on the pavement, each step a desperate plea for distance, for safety, for anything but the image burned into my mind. The police arrived quickly, drawn by my frantic cries and the shattered windows of the bar. They found the creature among the broken bottles and spilled liquor behind the counter. She was dead, her body twisted at an unnatural angle, her skinless face frozen in a grimace of agony. I was taken to the hospital. My arm was stitched, my cuts were cleaned, and they gave me strong sedatives. The police tried to question me, but the words would not come. My mind replayed the impossible attack again and again. Weeks passed in a fog of fear and exhaustion. Sleep brought only nightmares, vivid replays of the brutal struggle, the smell of decay, the milky eyes. I saw her face every time I closed my eyes. Every shadow held a lurking threat. Every sound outside my apartment sent a jolt of terror through my body. The bar remained closed, a crime scene, a place I could not imagine ever stepping into again. My life had shattered, replaced by a constant, gnawing dread. A detective visited my apartment one rainy afternoon. He was a gruff man with tired eyes, carrying a worn leather briefcase. He sat on my sofa, his presence heavy in the small room. He looked at me with a strange mixture of pity and confusion. He spoke slowly, carefully. They had identified the woman who attacked me. Her name was Laura Jensen. They found old records, forgotten files. He paused, his gaze fixed on my face. Laura Jensen had died in 1923. She had been buried in the Old Town Cemetery over a century ago. The detective stood up, his report clutched in his hand. He said he had no explanation. He looked at me, then left, leaving only the chilling, impossible truth. My world fractured, leaving me suspended in a horror that had no name, no logic, and no end. No sound rose from the cobbled streets of Paris in the year 1620. The great city ceased its bustling life, gripped by the pestilence. I walked through this desolation, my figure a solitary mark against the empty buildings. My long waxed coat and the beaked mask I wore proclaimed my grim profession to all who saw me. My presence confirmed the final truth. Death had claimed another home, another family, another life. I moved like a phantom along the empty avenues, an omen of finality and dread. Residents peered from behind shuttered windows, their faces contorted with stark fear when they glimpsed my tall, dark silhouette. I was the harbinger, the one who brought no comfort but only the stark reality of their inescapable doom. I observed the city's agony with a calm, professional distance. Each wheezing breath, each fevered tremor, I noted with clinical precision in my mind. The pervasive suffering did not touch my thoughts. It was merely a field of study. I simply marked the fallen, a silent recorder in a dying city. I knew I was a feared figure, but their fear was simply a symptom of their disease, not an emotion I acknowledged within myself. I merely existed to count the dead. I moved from one deserted street to another, guided by the familiar morbid path that marked the plague's progress. I approached a house whose door stood slightly ajar, a common sign of recent death. Inside, the air hung still and cold, bearing the smell of illness and decay. I found the man, a baker by his clothing, lying across his bed, his skin already mottled, and performed the swift examination, confirming what I already knew. Another entry for my ledger awaited. As I turned to leave, I saw a small chest of dark wood on a nearby table. Symbols I did not know were carved into its surface. On top of the chest rested a small object. It was a mask. Bone formed its shape, intricately carved to resemble a human face with hollow eyes and an open mouth. Its surface appeared ancient, and a distinct warmth radiated from it, defying the room's chill. I reached out, my fingers brushing against the surface. It felt smooth and hard. An undeniable current passed into my hand, and I felt a pull I could not explain. I felt a compelling urge to possess it. This sensation went beyond mere interest. I picked it up, feeling its strange heat against my palm. I told myself it was simply an antique. This antique would make a unique specimen from my collection of morbid curiosities. Such artifacts held historical value. I secured it within my coat, and its warmth pressed against my side as I resumed my grim rounds. I arrived back at my quarters within the hospital walls. The bone mask still radiated its strange warmth through the fabric of my coat. I removed the mask from its hidden place. It glowed with a soft red light. The light pulsed from its hollow eyes, then from its open mouth. The entire bone surface began to emit this crimson beat. I stared at it. An urge to place it on my face became too strong to resist. I lifted it and fitted it over my own features. The walls of my room dissolved into nothingness. The floor beneath my feet vanished. I stood on air in a vast, cold expanse. The light from the mask was the only illumination. The crimson glow pulsed around me. Shapes began to form in the distant gloom. They were the suffering forms of those I had left behind. Their faces contorted, their bodies twisted. They did not scream, but I felt their anguish. A voice spoke then. It was my own voice, yet it echoed with a terrible judgment. "You linger among them," the voice accused. "You watch their final struggles too long. You savor each rasping breath. You observe the onset of death with a hungry interest." The words pierced through my careful defenses. I felt a sudden heat rise in my chest. The vast chamber pressed in on me. "You find pleasure in the power you hold," the voice continued. "You choose who receives what meager comfort the hospital offers. You decide who lives long enough to become a subject for your studies. You decide who simply dies." The truth of those words struck me. I felt the weight of them. The bone mask tightened on my face. Its heat grew almost unbearable. The red light intensified. I tried to deny it. I tried to push the accusations away. But the voice intensified. It demanded my full admission. The suffering forms around me seemed to lean closer, their silent agony amplifying the voice's power. A confession tore from my throat. "Yes," I whispered. My own voice, amplified by the mask, boomed back at me. "I linger. I find a strange satisfaction in the observation of their decline. I do feel a cruel power. I have chosen who lived and who died for my own curiosity." The words hung in the crimson air. The forms around me seemed to recede. The mask's judgment was complete. The crimson light receded from the air. The suffocating heat vanished from my face, and my room solidified around me. My hands felt empty, the bone mask no longer present. A sudden tremor shook my body, an uncontrollable shiver that rattled my teeth. A searing pain erupted deep in my groin. Then another, a hot spike in my armpit. My chest ached with a throbbing pressure, each beat of my heart a painful echo. My breath became shallow, then ragged. My vision blurred, dark spots dancing at the edges of my sight. The sickness, the very plague I had merely recorded in others, now seized my own flesh with a brutal grip. My careful distance shattered instantly. I was no longer the detached observer, the phantom of death. I was the patient, the victim. The suffering I had catalogued, the pain I had studied with such clinical detachment, now consumed me entirely. I finally understood the agonizing meaning of their torment. I turned the key in the lock of my new apartment door, a place I had secured for a low rent. The air inside felt cool and still, and an intense quiet consumed any sound from the street below. This was not a regular quiet. It was absolute and complete, as if the very air absorbed all noise and muffled all thought. I stepped deeper into the empty living room, my footsteps on the bare floorboards producing sounds that seemed to vanish. The lack of ambient noise felt wrong, a sense that something was amiss with this pervasive stillness. "Hello?" My voice sounded loud as I spoke into the quiet. "Hello," a voice responded. It was not my own echo. The sound came from everywhere and nowhere, a whisper just at the edge of hearing, yet it was clear. My skin prickled with dread. I stood unmoving. My heart began to beat hard against my ribs. I had been alone a moment before. No one else was in the apartment. I knew I had checked. "Who is there?" My voice became a strained whisper. "You are there," the voice answered. The simple words, spoken without malice but with an undeniable presence, sent a shiver through my body. This was real. This was happening. The air itself seemed to tighten around me, and the abnormal quiet felt active, a presence encompassing me. I stood frozen. My thoughts churned, discarding each explanation. No one else was here. The air cooled around me, and I felt a prickling sensation on my arms. I considered the cheap rent I paid and the urgency of my move. I knew I had seized the opportunity, pushing down doubts about the apartment's history. "You always did settle for less," the voice murmured, pulling the words directly from my thoughts. "Always running from what you could not face, hoping a new space would erase an old mistake." My breath caught. It knew. It truly knew things I had kept silent, even from myself. This was not an echo or a trick. This was something else. My hand went to my pocket, retrieving my phone. I would record it and capture the evidence. "No," the voice said, clearer now, cutting into my perception. "We need the quiet. You need the quiet. Put it away. There is nothing to capture but what you already hold." My fingers fumbled with the phone's recording app. I pressed record, holding the device up, pointing it around the room. "Say something again," I whispered, my voice strained. Only the sound of my own breathing filled the room. I waited, fear tightening its grip around my chest. Nothing. The voice was gone. I stopped the recording and played it back. The audio file contained only the rustle of my clothes and my gasps. The voice, whatever it was, had simply vanished, refusing to be documented. A wave of helplessness washed over me. The attempt to capture it had pushed it away. The voice wanted quiet. It demanded quiet. I slowly lowered my phone, sliding it back into my pocket. The absolute stillness returned. No longer just an absence of sound, but a tangible presence. It was an embrace, cool and pressing. My anxiety began to recede, replaced by a calm that felt alien yet comforting. I took a deep breath, and listening to the quiet felt easier. My body relaxed. The desire for noise, for distraction, began to fade. The quiet was not empty. It was filled by an awareness that only presented itself when I stopped resisting. The comfort of the quiet had been a deception. A small part of me still recognized the danger. I decided to leave. The decision formed quickly, an urgent thought overriding the stillness that had begun to settle within me. I began packing. "You will lose me," the voice stated, clear and precise as I folded a shirt. It was a simple declaration of fact. "When you leave this place, I will be lost to you." A wave of grief washed over me, unexpected and sharp. I had grown accustomed to its presence, its intimate knowledge, the way it filled the oppressive quiet. But freedom, however frightening, called stronger. I finished packing, closed the door on the apartment's suffocating stillness, and walked away. The city outside felt loud and chaotic. The constant sound of traffic, the distant sounds of people, the everyday noises crashed against my ears, assaulting a sensitivity I had not known I possessed. I found a new place, a small room in a busy part of town, desperate for the noise to drown out any lingering echo of the apartment. I kept busy, constantly seeking external stimuli, music playing, conversations, anything to fill the air. Days turned into weeks. The quiet of the old apartment was a distant, unsettling memory. I believed I had truly escaped. One evening, after a draining day, I sat alone in my new room. The city outside quieted somewhat as night deepened. I leaned back, closing my eyes, and for the first time in a long time, I allowed my mind to drift into a state of complete inner calm. All the external noises faded into a soft backdrop. My thoughts stilled. Then it came. "Hello?" the voice whispered, not from the room, not from the walls, but from deep within my own mind. It was a direct presence, here, now, manifesting whenever I achieved true inner quiet. My eyes snapped open. The escape had been an illusion. The entity was not bound by walls or distance. It had become a part of me, waiting for the stillness within my own head to manifest. I was never truly alone again. The quiet was no longer just an external condition. It was a state of being, a threshold for its presence, and I was forever bound to it. I caught my reflection in every surface, a habit ingrained since childhood. The polished chrome of the toaster, the darkened television screen, the glass of the picture frame on the hallway table, each offered a momentary glimpse of my face. I would pause, just a breath, to adjust my hair or straighten my shirt, seeking reassurance in the image staring back. It felt like a necessary ritual, a quick check that the world still approved of the person it saw. My mother often watched me from the kitchen, shaking her head with a small smile. "Always checking yourself, Leo," she would say, her voice carrying a warmth that softened the implied criticism. "There's more to life than what's in the mirror." I usually just shrugged, offering a casual smile in return. I knew she meant well, but I never truly heard her words. The validation I sought felt real and immediate, a constant affirmation I could not do without. The world outside often felt a bit chaotic, but my own image always provided a sense of control and calm. Later that afternoon, the usual sense of calm shattered. Mark and I had been talking in the park, the conversation drifting aimlessly as it always did. He suddenly squinted at me, a casual, almost dismissive look on his face. "You know, Leo, you really ought to get more sleep," he said, without malice, just simple observation. "You've got these dark circles under your eyes. You look a bit tired, actually." His words hit me with an unexpected force. They burrowed deep, dismantling the careful image I had constructed for myself that day, for every day. Dark circles? Tired? The thought coiled in my stomach, a sudden, sickening knot. I tried to dismiss it, to laugh it off, but the casual remark had already done its damage. I barely registered the rest of our conversation. His words replayed in my mind on the walk home, each repetition amplifying the perceived flaw. The moment I stepped through my front door, I headed straight for the bathroom, not even bothering to greet my mother. I flipped on the harsh overhead light and leaned close to the large mirror above the sink. My eyes scrutinized every inch of my face, searching for the evidence of Mark's careless assessment. Was it true? Did I really look tired? I pulled at the skin beneath my eyes, tilting my head left, then right. The reflection seemed to confirm his words, dark smudges appearing more prominent with each anxious moment I spent staring. A wave of dread washed over me, a desperate need to fix what felt fundamentally broken. I spent a long time there, lost in the critical examination, utterly consumed by the image in front of me. I remained in the bathroom, the harsh overhead light casting stark shadows that seemed to emphasize every perceived flaw on my face. The image in the mirror was unwavering, confirming my worst fears. The dark circles under my eyes truly did mar my appearance, a stark betrayal of the perfect illusion I tried to maintain. My friend's casual words, "You look a bit tired," echoed, magnified by the late hour and my growing despair. I leaned closer, pressing my forehead against the cool glass, desperate for a different outcome, for a shift in the reflection's weary gaze. I just wanted the tired eyes to vanish, to disappear and leave behind the confident self I remembered, unblemished. As I stared, a thought, cold and clear, formed in my mind. Why bother? It is already done. The words formed with unnerving clarity, a direct answer to my silent wish. I recoiled from the mirror, a sudden chill creeping down my spine. Had I imagined it? Was my exhaustion finally twisting my mind? My heart thumped against my ribs, a frantic rhythm against the sudden fear. Then a sound. A soft, dismissive sigh rose from the glass. My reflection's lips did not move, but the distinct utterance, barely perceptible, resonated. It spoke directly to the dread churning in my stomach. I gripped the sink counter, knuckles white. This could not be real. This had to be a trick of my mind, a symptom of the intense pressure and lack of sleep. I stood there, trembling, trying to convince myself of my own sanity. I spun away from the mirror, not daring to look back at the unchanging image. I stumbled out of the bathroom, leaving the light on, and practically fell into bed. Sleep did not come easily. The phantom whisper, the disembodied sigh, lingered like a cold presence at the edges of my awareness. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the reflection, its silent gaze, and heard that strange sound echoing in my head. The idea of waking tomorrow, of facing that mirror again, filled me with a sickening dread that remained. I woke to whispers. They came not from within my head, but from the room itself. They crawled from the darkened window pane, from the glossy surface of my bedside table, from the polished wooden frame of a picture on the wall. Sharp words I could not discern, yet their intent felt clear, a mocking undercurrent that stung me. My heart pounded against my ribs, beating frantically against the sudden, impossible sound. I sat bolt upright, my eyes darting around the room. The whispers seemed to recede into the surfaces, but their chilling presence lingered, a cold awareness that settled in my bones. Every reflective surface in the room felt suddenly alive, each surface now a watching point. The full-length mirror in the wardrobe, the glass on my desk, the metallic base of my lamp. They all held a cold, expectant glint, promising further torment if I dared to look away. A desperate anger propelled me from the bed. I stumbled towards the full-length mirror embedded in my wardrobe door. It was the source of my dread, the largest of the reflective surfaces now tormenting me. My breath hitched as I approached, my own face staring back, distorted by a new fear. The reflection's eyes held a challenging glint. It offered a silent dare. I pressed my palm flat against the cool glass, my reflection doing the same. Its lips twisted into a cruel smile, wider than my own. Then its hand moved, not matching mine but grasping my wrist with sudden, impossible force. A sharp tug pulled at my arm. My fingers slipped on the glass, a frantic scraping sound. The entire mirror rippled, losing its solid surface, becoming a sudden, yielding void. I felt a strong suction, a powerful, inescapable drag that pulled me forward, through the shimmering plane. There was no pain, only an overwhelming pull that tore at my being, stretching me thin. The world spun, a dizzying rush of light and dark, an instant of utter disorientation. A cold shock enveloped me, a sudden reshaping. My breath was stolen from my lungs. Then, with a jarring jolt, it was over. I stood, pressed against something unseen and cold, looking out. My room was before me, but it felt distant and unreachable, separated by an invisible barrier. My doppelganger, my own face, stood where I had just been, adjusting its shirt with a deliberate movement. It turned towards the door just as my mother opened it, her face etched with concern. "Leo? Are you all right, dear?" I heard a noise. My doppelganger offered a reassuring smile. "Just getting ready, Mom. Everything is fine." The words, my words, sounded normal, delivered with a casual ease that my own terrified lungs could never manage. I watched, trapped, as my imposter walked past her, exiting the room, leaving me alone on the other side of the glass. The unseen barrier held me, rigid and unyielding. My room stretched out before me, distant and unreachable. I saw everything through the glass, yet could touch nothing. My breath did not fog the invisible pain. No air moved in this desolate space. No sound reached my ears. Only the cold, hard reality of my confinement existed. My doppelganger, wearing my face, moved with horrifying ease. It walked to my bed, sat on the edge, and picked up a book, flipping through the pages. This casual gesture struck me with raw helplessness. This was my life, being lived by a stranger. This was my prison. I watched the imposter live my existence. It ate dinner with my mother, laughed at her jokes, and helped her with the dishes. Each interaction brought fresh torment. My mother smiled at it, completely unaware of the monstrous fraud in her home. I screamed silently, my voice a useless echo within my trapped mind. My cold, trembling hands beat against the invisible wall, but it offered no give. Only the reflected image of my own desperate struggle showed on the surface. I held on to one thought, a desperate hope. The imposter, a being of the glass, had no reflection. Surely someone would notice this fundamental truth. My mother, with her discerning eyes, would eventually catch sight of the blank space where its image should be. She would see the deception. This thought sustained me, the only thing keeping total despair at bay. I imagined the moment of discovery, the shock, the terrible realization. Then the larger dread consumed me. What if it was never discovered? What if I remained here, an eternal observer, while my doppelganger enacted some sinister plan? What if it hurt my mother, or twisted my life into something vile? The image of its cruel smile, wider than my own, flashed in my mind. My permanent entrapment, a chilling prospect, mingled with its unknown intentions. I was trapped, a powerless and forgotten presence, watching my life unfold through a pane of glass. Mara's laughter started before my eyes even opened, a bright, insistent sound that vibrated through the floorboards. I pulled myself from the bedsheets, my head a dull throb. Another morning began with that ceaseless giggle echoing in the cramped house. Milo already sat at the kitchen table, his back straight, his eyes fixed on the window. He did not turn when I entered, or acknowledge the cheerful noise that filled our small space. I knew he was listening to it just as much as I was, letting it slowly chip away at his composure. I poured coffee, my hands shaking slightly. Mara's laugh rose in pitch then, a strange, breathless quality to it. Milo finally spoke, his voice flat and hard. "Make her stop." I did not answer. He slammed his fist down on the table, the cups rattling. I said, "Make her stop, Kana." His eyes met mine, cold and distant, a new, cruel edge defining them, and the unending laughter of our child continued from the other room. The shrill laughter from the other room continued, and Milo stood. His chair scraped back across the floor. He walked into Mara's room without another word. A sudden crack echoed, followed by a wet tear, and the laughter stopped. My breath caught in my throat, a scream lodged in my chest. I heard him grunt, a sound of effort, then another rip. My legs moved on their own, carrying me to the doorway. My heart pounded a fast rhythm against my ribs. I saw Milo kneeling beside Mara's crib. His hands were red, slick. He held something limp and small, a child's arm detached from a small, still body. My vision blurred. My world shattered. He looked up, his eyes wide and vacant, a calm replacing his rage. He held up the severed limb. I saw the white stuffing emerging from the torn edge, a contrast to the red on his fingers. My daughter, my Mara, was a doll. The physical horror vanished, replaced by a deep psychological disorientation. Mara had never been real. The realization stripped away my understanding. Kana's understanding was stripped away. Milo knelt there, the doll's torn limb in his hand, and spoke with a terrifying calmness. "We are not married, Kana. None of this is real. This entire house, this life, it is all a government program. Forever Home 15. We are just teenagers, trapped here with the rest of our class." The implication of his words landed with a jarring force. The quiet of the room, broken only by his voice, suddenly shifted. A sudden, cold voice, not from Milo but from the air itself, cut through the quiet. It had no source, yet it filled the room. Attention forever. Home. 15 participants. This is a system-wide alert. You are reminded of the family first. Failure to maintain compliance with assigned family units will result in immediate execution. The words hung in the air, a chilling final declaration. It confirmed Milo's impossible statement, making our strange manufactured existence horrifyingly clear. Milo returned to the small room. He carried a new doll. It had Mara's features, perfect and unblemished. His eyes looked empty when they met mine. A wide smile stretched across his face, unmoving. He placed the doll. He then walked to the kitchen table, sitting in his chair with a straight back. He stared out the window still. I watched his form. His eyes held no recognition for me. He sat there, a blank presence. The quietness in the room was complete. I stood alone in the small house, watching him. The unending, manufactured nightmare stretched before me. A small red light blinked silently on the kitchen wall. My car died suddenly on the desolate mountain highway, leaving me alone. The last streaks of sunlight were fading behind the jagged peaks, taking all warmth from the crisp air. I tried my phone, but the screen stayed dark, and when I switched it on, no signal bars appeared on the display. This road was distant from any town, a forgotten stretch of asphalt cutting through vast, empty wilderness. Darkness settled fast, making the towering trees on either side of the road merge into solid, imposing walls. I stepped out of the car, feeling the immediate bite of the evening cold. My breath escaped invisible clouds. That was when I heard it. A distinct thud against the loose gravel coming from behind me. The sound did not belong to an animal. It was a regular, deliberate cadence. It approached, unwavering, and a cold, heavy dread gripped me. Someone walked on the road. They were behind me, drawing closer with every step, their presence confirming a primal fear I had just started to recognize. The approaching footsteps pounded not only on the gravel, but also against the walls of my skull, triggering a distant, almost forgotten memory. Mrs. Cooper, my fifth-grade teacher, a woman known for her peculiar lessons, had once demonstrated a bizarre survival technique. She had stood before our class, her gaze intense, and explained that if you suspected someone was following you, you should drop a small personal item. She suggested a coin, a glove, or even a shoe, stating that if the pursuer picked it up, then you would know they were deliberately trailing you and not just walking the same way. Her advice had seemed absurd then. The memory of our giggling faded as the chilling reality of the mountain night infused her words with a terrible, undeniable logic. My mind seized on the last item she had named, a shoe. My left sneaker felt substantial on my foot. This was the one thing I could do. My fingers fumbled with the laces, pulling them open, then I tugged the shoe free from my foot. The cold asphalt met my sock, a sudden shock against the sole. I lowered the sneaker gently to the road's edge, placing it just beyond a clump of dry weeds. Then, without a second thought, I scrambled into the shallow ditch, pressing my body flat against the damp earth, concealed by the sparse brush. I held my breath. I focused on the approaching sound, waiting for the moment when my trap would confirm the identity of my shadow. My heart pounded against my ribs as the rhythmic crunch of footsteps grew louder, each sound striking my nerves directly. I pressed further into the damp earth, my breath catching in my throat, hoping the sparse brush hid me. The footsteps stopped. They halted directly beside the spot where I had dropped my sneaker. I squeezed my eyes shut for a moment, then opened them, peering through a gap in the weeds. A dark shape stood on the asphalt, indistinct against the deepening twilight. It was tall and human-shaped. The shadow bent down. I watched as a hand, a pale blur in the gloom, reached out and retrieved my sneaker from the ground. There was no hesitation, no apparent surprise. The hand straightened. The shadow continued walking, its pace unwavering. It seemed oblivious to its discovery or my presence. Relief washed over me as the figure picked up the shoe and walked on without pausing or looking around. My body trembled, not from cold, but from the sudden release of terror. I pushed myself up slowly, my limbs stiff from the cold and the lingering tension. The road ahead looked empty. Darkness still surrounded me, but it no longer felt quite so menacing. I carefully stepped out of the ditch, back onto the solid asphalt, feeling the rough texture beneath my socked foot. My car sat as a dark mass further down the road. I started walking towards it, slow and cautious, scanning the highway. Then I saw it. Just a few yards ahead, where the road curved, my sneaker rested neatly in the middle of the asphalt. The laces were tied into a perfect bow, white against the dark material. A deep chill settled in my bones. I hurried forward, my socked foot crunching on the gravel at the road's edge, my eyes fixed on the return shoe. I stopped just before it, unable to reach. It lay there, a placed gift. Beside it, scrawled into the dirt, were 3 words. Each letter was precisely formed and clear, even in the darkness. Your turn, pupil. The relief I had felt moments ago evaporated as a dread climbed up my throat. This was a deliberate act. The game had just begun. The bar's flashing lights still pulsed behind my eyes as I stumbled into Sarah's apartment. I watched her kick off her shoes, the movement a blur in my peripheral vision. We passed the large hallway mirror. I glanced at our reflections and a sharp jolt went through me. My own face looked haggard. Sarah's image in the glass stood still, her eyes wide and staring straight ahead, completely separate from her moving body. I blinked hard, rubbing my eyes. When I looked again, her reflection moved normally. She smiled at my words. It had to be the late hour, the cheap drinks, or just my exhausted mind playing tricks. Sarah's still reflection lingered, urging me to scan my surroundings. At the grocery checkout, the young man's reflection in a metallic panel appeared flat, his eyes fixed on me. I looked directly at him. He smiled, completely normal. I paid, a tremor running through me. Later, passing my elderly neighbor, Mrs. Davison, in the park, her reflection in a bus stop shelter glass caught my eye. Her reflected face turned towards me, a knowing smile playing, her gaze following. The real Mrs. Davison just tossed crumbs, oblivious. I angled my phone's dark screen towards the shelter. Her reflection remained locked on me, frozen in that knowing stare, while she moved normally. These bizarre reflections became a pattern. A barista's image, a delivery driver's image. All held my gaze too long. separate from the person's actual movements. Each time, I looked away, then angled my phone to confirm. The reflections were always still, always watching, their eyes fixed on me with a blank intensity. The real people never showed, urging me to search further. The subtle glances escalated from specific moments to an undeniable constant, encompassing my entire day. My landlord paused mid-sentence as I entered the building lobby, his gaze following me across the tiles until I reached the elevator doors. The mail carrier, usually focused on his route with practiced efficiency, now stopped abruptly at my mailbox, his head turned to track my car down the street until it vanished from view. At the coffee shop, the barista would cease grinding beans and preparing drinks, her eyes fixing on me with an unwavering intensity until I ordered and moved away. At work, the familiar office chatter died the moment I walked onto the floor. Colleagues stopped typing, their faces lifting in unison to watch me cross the room to my desk. Every conversation halted upon my entry, only to resume in hushed tones when I passed. Their collective stare, always directed at me, made me the singular focus of a silent, inescapable watch. The collective stares in the office had been a prelude to the grocery store. Fluorescent lights amplified the feeling of being hunted. Every aisle felt like a gauntlet. Shopping carts swerved to keep me in view, their metallic glint catching distorted faces locked on mine. I clutched my cart, knuckles white, trying to focus, but my peripheries were alive with turning heads. I pushed past a fruit display, feeling a prickle on my neck as I saw a flash. My eyes darted to the large freezer door filled with frozen meals. A young mother stood there, her small child in the cart, her body bent, her face animated with a gentle smile. Her reflection in the glass was different. Her reflected face was devoid of expression, her eyes wide and vacant, staring directly into my own with unwavering intensity. It was the same dead stare I had seen, but this time, too close, too open, too undeniable. A ragged sound ripped from my chest, a scream tore through the store. My cart toppled, spilling groceries. Shoppers gasped, recoiled, pulling their children back, their faces twisted with fear. Terrified whispers spread. 2 security guards, burly men, converged on me, hands outstretched, voices sharp. I dragged the heavy couch across the floor, blocking the door. Every window was latched, every curtain drawn tight. My apartment had become a fortress, a futile attempt to keep out what I knew was already everywhere. The frantic scramble to barricade myself had done little to quell the gnawing certainty. Their eyes still watched me, a constant pressure on my skin. I could feel their collective stare even through thick walls, through locked doors. There was no escape from their relentless gaze. I sat at the small kitchen table, staring blankly at my laptop screen. It was off, a dark mirror reflecting the room. My own gaunt face looked back at me, a stranger with wide, desperate eyes. Behind my reflection, where the window should have been clear glass, a thick, white mist clung to the panes. It was not a reflection of condensation from inside. The glass itself looked frosted, completely opaque. A chill crept through me, deeper than the apartment's cold air. I rose slowly, my muscles protesting. I walked to the window, the one I had just seen in the screen's reflection. My hands trembled as I reached for the edge of the heavy curtain. I pulled it back just a fraction, creating a narrow gap. Through the sliver of space, I saw them. Faces, many faces. They were pressed flat against the glass, pale and lifeless. Their eyes were wide, vacant, completely unblinking. They just stood there, a silent, patient multitude, watching me from the other side. They were waiting. My breath hitched. There was nowhere to go.